Light years from Earth, the human diplomatic vessel Horizon drifted into orbit around the Vargarian homeworld. Commander Jaiwan Park stood at the bridge window, watching the rust-colored planet grow larger. This was humanity's first meeting with the legendary Vargarians, massive predatory aliens known throughout the galaxy for their strength and fierce protection of their territory. Nervous? Asked Captain Juno beside her. Wouldn't you be? Jaiwan straightened her uniform. The reports say they've rejected alliances with 12 other species. The communication screen lit up, showing a Vargarian face covered in silver-gray fur with amber eyes that seemed to glow. Sharp teeth flashed as he spoke. Human vessel. I am Chief Diplomat Taehyun. You have permission to send one shuttle with 5 representatives. No weapons. The journey to the surface was tense. Jaiwan reviewed what little they knew about Vargarian culture. They evolved from pack hunters. They valued strength and honesty. And they were extremely protective of their young. The shuttle landed in a massive stone plaza surrounded by buildings that seemed carved from mountains rather than built. Waiting for them was a delegation of 7 Vargarians, each nearly 8 feet tall. Their leader, Taehyun, stepped forward. Commander Park, he rumbled, welcome to Vargar. The meeting hall was warm and dimly lit, with stone benches arranged in a circle. As the diplomats took their seats, Jaiwan noticed the Vargarians kept glancing at the humans with what seemed like suspicion. Your kind are new to us, Taehyun explained. We have heard stories of humans, but stories are often false. Tell us why we should form an alliance with your people. Jaiwan began explaining human history and values, but she could tell the Vargarians remained skeptical. Their ears flicked back when she mentioned Earth's wildlife, and they exchanged glances when she described human goals in space. You say you come in peace, a female Vargarian named Sunny interrupted, but humans have no natural predators on their world. How can you understand our ways? We may not have evolved as you did, Jaiwan admitted, but humans have faced many dangers. We understand survival. The tension in the room grew. Jaiwan could feel the first contact slipping away, becoming another failed attempt at alliance with the Vargarians. Then came a sound, a scratching at the massive wooden doors of the hall. A guard opened it slightly, and through the gap darted a small figure. A Vargarian cub, no larger than a human child of 5 or 6, had somehow escaped its caretakers. The adult Vargarians froze. Clearly, cubs were not allowed at diplomatic functions. The little one paused, sniffing the air, then bounded straight across the circle, past its own kind, directly to Jaiwan. Before anyone could react, the cub was standing before her, head tilted in curiosity. Jaiwan remained perfectly still. She knew from her briefing that sudden moves around Vargarian young could be seen as threatening. The cub chirped something in the Vargarian language and reached out one clawed paw toward Jaiwan's hand. What should I do? Jaiwan whispered to Taehyun, not taking her eyes off the cub. She appears to want to touch you, Taehyun said, his voice filled with surprise. This is most unusual. Our young typically fear all non-Vargarians. Slowly, Jaiwan turned her palm upward. The cub placed her paw in Jaiwan's hand, chirping happily. A collective gasp went through the Vargarian delegation. Her name is Heejin, son, he said quietly. She is my daughter. I have never seen her approach an off-worlder willingly. The cub, Heejin, seemed fascinated by Jaiwan's uniform buttons. She touched them gently, then looked up at the human with eyes full of innocent curiosity rather than fear. Children often see what adults miss, Jaiwan said softly. A Vargarian caretaker appeared at the door, clearly distressed at losing track of her charge. But Taehyun waved her away. Let the cub stay, he ordered. His amber eyes studied Jaiwan with new interest. It seems we have much to learn about humans. The meeting continued, but everything had changed. With Heejin sitting contentedly beside Jaiwan, occasionally touching the human's hand or uniform, the Vargarians began to ask different questions. Not about human weapons or territory, but about human families, how they raised their young, and their protective instincts. By the time the diplomatic session ended, Taehyun had agreed to a second meeting. As they left, Heejin chirped a farewell and bounded back to her mother. You have made an unusual first impression, Commander Park, Taehyun said. Perhaps there is more to humans than we thought. 3 months after first contact, a Vargarian ship landed at Seoul International Spaceport. Elder Do-hyun led the small group of 8 Vargarians stepping onto Earth for the first time. Among them was his young cub, Minji, who kept close to her father's side. Commander Jaewon Park waited at the bottom of the ramp with Lieutenant Yoonji Lee and a small welcoming committee. They bowed respectfully as the Vargarians approached. "Welcome to Earth," Jaewon said. "We hope your stay will be comfortable." Do-hyun sniffed the air, his large nostrils flaring. "Your world smells of water and growing things. Different from our home." The Vargarians were taken to their quarters in the diplomatic compound. Special rooms had been prepared with higher gravity settings and warmer temperatures to match their homeworld. Minji kept staring at everything with wide golden eyes, especially the trees visible through the windows. "She has never seen so much green," Do-hyun explained, noticing Jaewon watching his cub. "Our world has fewer plants." The next day, the cultural exchange officially began. Human scientists met with Vargarian experts to share knowledge about their worlds. But the most important part of the visit was scheduled for the afternoon, the first meeting between Vargarian cubs and human children. In a large playground built specially for the occasion, 5 Vargarian cubs including Minji would meet 15 human children between the ages of 6 and 10. The playground had climbing structures strong enough for the heavier Vargarian young and soft landing areas all around. "Are you certain this is safe?" Do-hyun asked as they watched the human children arrive. "Our cubs have sharp claws and do not always know their strength." "The children have been prepared," Jaewon assured him. "And we have supervisors watching carefully." At first, the two groups kept apart. The human children whispered among themselves, pointing at the furry, cat-like aliens. The Vargarian cubs huddled together, their ears flat against their heads in uncertainty. Then a boy named Miho stepped forward with a ball. He rolled it toward Minji, who watched it with predator focus. When it stopped at her feet, she poked it with one claw. The ball rolled back toward Miho, who laughed with delight. "She wants to play," he called to the other children. Within minutes, the ice was broken. Human children and Vargarian cubs were engaged in simple games, their natural curiosity overcoming any fear. Minji seemed particularly interested in a climbing frame, watching the human children scramble up with envy. "She can try if she wants," said Hyun-woo, one of the human supervisors. Minji needed no second invitation. She bounded to the frame and began climbing, her natural agility making it look easy. The human children watched in amazement as she reached the top in seconds. But then trouble struck. Minji, unused to the structure's material, lost her grip near the top. She gave a frightened yowl as she began to fall. Before any Vargarian could react, Hyun-woo was already moving. He positioned himself beneath the falling cub and caught her, though the impact knocked him backward. Minji's claws instinctively extended, leaving 4 deep scratches across his arms. "Are you okay?" Hyun-woo asked the cub first, ignoring his own injuries. He carefully checked her for any harm before setting her down. Do-hyun rushed forward, pulling his cub close and examining her. Finding no injuries, he turned to Hyun-woo with a strange expression. "You are bleeding," he said, pointing to the human's arms where blood was seeping through his shirt. Hyun-woo glanced at the scratches. "It's nothing serious. Just needs cleaning." "You were injured protecting another's cub," Do-hyun stated, his tone suggesting this was somehow unusual. "Of course," Hyun-woo replied simply. "She might have been hurt badly in the fall." Later that evening, as the humans and Vargarians shared a meal, Do-hyun kept watching the human caregivers with the children. "Something puzzles you?" Jaewon asked him. "Your species confuses me," Do-hyun admitted. "Today, I saw your people treat our cubs with the same care as your own young." The injured human showed no anger at his wounds. "Children are children," Yoonji said, joining the conversation. "It doesn't matter whose they are. We protect them all." "This is not universal behavior among species," Do-hyun explained. "Most protect only their own." Perhaps that's what makes humans interesting to your cubs, Jaiwan suggested. They sense we can be trusted with their safety. The next morning, something unprecedented happened. The Bargarian adults were discussing trade agreements when Minji and another cub entered the room. Without hesitation, they walked up to Hyunwoo, whose arms were bandaged from the previous day's incident. Minji chirped softly and held out a small carved stone, a Bargarian gift of respect. The human accepted it with a bow, and the cubs purred in approval. Do-hyun watched this exchange with wide eyes. In all our contact with other species, he said quietly to Jaiwan, I have never seen our cubs offer gifts to outsiders. Something about your kind speaks to them at a level we do not fully understand. The space station Harmony hung in orbit between Earth and the Bargarian home system, a symbol of growing cooperation between the two species. Built as neutral ground, it housed diplomats, scientists, and families from both worlds. Ambassador Jaiwan Park had been stationed there for 6 months, overseeing the deepening relationship between humans and Bargarians. She stood in the observation deck, watching a transport shuttle dock at the station's main bay. Another group of Bargarian scientists arriving, noted Lieutenant Yoonji Lee, checking her datapad. And they've brought more cubs this time. 12 in total now. Jaiwan nodded with satisfaction. The Bargarians bringing their young to the station was the strongest sign yet of their growing trust. Where are they housing the cubs? Jaiwan asked. Nursery Sector 7, along with the young from the Centaurian delegation and a few others, Yoonji replied. It's becoming quite the interspecies daycare. The station's artificial day cycle was just entering evening phase when the first alarm sounded. Jaiwan was reviewing trade documents in her office when the lights flickered and a deep rumble shook the station. The communication panel lit up immediately. Ambassador Park called the station's chief engineer, his face tight with concern. We have a situation. Report, Jaiwan replied, already rising from her desk. Reactor cascade failure in progress. Something went wrong during the power coupling adjustment. We're seeing system failures spreading through multiple sections. The station shuddered again, more violently this time. Warning klaxons began to blare. Casualties? Jaiwan asked, striding toward the door. None yet, but we're evacuating all non-essential personnel to the emergency shelters. The situation is. He hesitated, deteriorating rapidly. Jaiwan made her way to the emergency command center, passing station residents hurrying toward evacuation points. Inside the command center, screens displayed spreading red zones of system failures throughout the station. Status report, she demanded as she entered. The station commander looked up, his face grim. Ambassador Park, we have multiple hull breach warnings. Environmental systems are failing in sectors 3 through 9. Emergency force fields are holding for now, but power reserves are dropping. All residents accounted for? Jaiwan asked. Lieutenant Yoonji arrived, breathless from running. Ambassador, we have a problem. Nursery Sector 7 is cut off. The main access corridor suffered structural damage, and the emergency bulkheads sealed automatically. Jaiwan felt her blood run cold. How many children are in there? 27 total. 12 Bargarian cubs, 8 Centaurian younglings, 5 human children, and 2 Altair hatchlings, Yoonji reported. The environmental systems there are failing faster than in other sectors. Temperature is dropping and oxygen levels will follow. The station commander pointed to a flashing section on the holographic map. We've lost communication with that sector, but sensors show life signs still active. The nursery caregivers are with them, but they have no way out. Have you contacted the Bargarian representatives? Jaiwan asked. Yes, they're following standard evacuation protocols, the commander replied. All species are moving to their designated evacuation ships. Wait, Jaiwan said, confused. The Bargarians know their cubs are trapped and they're still evacuating? Standard crisis protocol for all species, explained the commander. Adults evacuate to secure points first, then coordinate rescue operations from safe positions. Jaiwan stared at him in disbelief. Those children don't have time for that. The nursery sector is showing the fastest environmental decay on the station. She turned to Yunji. Assemble our rescue team. We need thermal blankets, portable atmosphere generators, and medical kits. Ambassador, the station commander protested, the corridor to Nursery Sector 7 is compromised. It's too dangerous to send people in. Then we'll find another way, Jaiwan insisted. The emergency maintenance shafts should still be accessible. The Vargarian delegation is already boarding their ship, Yunji reported, looking up from her communication device. They've requested that we secure their young if possible, but they're following their protocols to evacuate adults first. They're leaving their cubs behind? Jaiwan couldn't hide her shock. It's their way, Yunji explained. They believe in saving the adults who can then coordinate a proper rescue with equipment and planning. Not our way, Jaiwan said firmly. Get me engineer Minsu. We need his expertise on the station's maintenance tunnels. Within minutes, Jaiwan had assembled a volunteer team, 3 humans who worked directly with the alien children, Engineer Minsu, and 2 medical staff. The route through the maintenance shafts will be tight, Minsu explained, showing them a path on his portable map. And we don't know what conditions we'll find. Parts of the station are losing atmosphere. We'll use emergency suits, Jaiwan decided. And move as quickly as possible. As they gathered their equipment, the station shook again. Alarms intensified. Hull breach in Sector 6, announced the station AI. Adjacent to Nursery Sector 7. Environmental conditions critical. Move out, Jaiwan ordered. Those children won't survive much longer in dropping temperatures and failing life support. We need to reach them now. As they entered the narrow maintenance shaft, Yunji's communicator beeped. Ambassador, she said, her voice tight, the Vargarian ship is requesting direct communication with you. Patch them through, Jaiwan replied, not slowing her pace. Taehyun's voice came through clearly. Ambassador Park, our sensors indicate humans are attempting to reach the nursery. This is extremely dangerous with the station in its current condition. We're aware of the risks, Jaiwan replied simply. There was a pause before Taehyun spoke again. You go yourself? The human ambassador? Yes, Jaiwan said as she climbed deeper into the station's infrastructure. Children need help. We're going to provide it. The communication ended without further comment. Jaiwan looked ahead into the darkened tunnel, knowing that time was running out for the young ones trapped beyond. The maintenance shaft narrowed as Jaiwan's team crawled deeper into the damaged station. Emergency lights flickered, casting strange shadows. They wore sealed suits with limited oxygen supplies. Engineer Minsu led the way, checking his handheld scanner. Life support in Nursery Sector 7 is failing fast, he reported. Temperature down to 12 degrees Celsius and dropping. Oxygen at 80% and falling. Vargarian cubs can't handle temperatures that low, said Dr. Sumi, one of the medical team. Their normal body temperature is higher than humans. They'll go into shock soon. The station groaned around them. Metal twisted as pressure differentials strained the structure. How much further? Jaiwan asked, her breath fogging her helmet. 2 more junctions, Minsu replied. Then we dropped down into the nursery's emergency access point. They reached a section where the shaft had partially collapsed. Jagged metal blocked most of the passage. Can we get through? Jaiwan asked. Minsu examined the damage. Yes, but carefully. The metal is sharp enough to tear our suits. One by one, they squeezed through the narrow opening. Jaiwan went last, feeling her suit catch on something sharp. She held her breath, waiting for the hiss of escaping air, but the suit held. Finally, they reached the access hatch above the nursery. Minsu checked the scanner again. Air pressure stable inside, but temperature now at 10 degrees and still dropping. I'm reading 27 life signs, all active. Open it, Jaiwan ordered. The nursery below was dimly lit by emergency lights. Children of different species huddled together in the center of the room. 4 adult caregivers moved among them, wrapping them in whatever blankets and clothing they could find. The Vargarian cubs were shivering visibly, their fur puffed out against the cold. Jaiwan's team dropped down through the hatch. The caregivers looked up in surprise and relief. Ambassador Park, one of them, called out. "We thought everyone had evacuated." Jaiwan removed her helmet now that they were in an area with atmosphere. "We've come to get you all out. How are the children?" The human and Centaurian children are managing, but the Vargarian cubs are struggling with the cold. And the Altair hatchlings need higher oxygen levels. Dr. Sumi immediately began unpacking portable atmosphere generators. "These will help stabilize the air quality," she explained. "And we brought thermal blankets for the cubs." They worked quickly, wrapping the Vargarian cubs in special thermal blankets designed to reflect body heat. The cubs chirped weakly, their usual energy diminished by the cold. "We need to move soon," Minsu warned. "My scanner shows structural integrity declining throughout this section." Jaiwan nodded. "We'll take them back through the maintenance shaft in groups. Vargarian cubs and Altair hatchlings first, since they're most vulnerable to the conditions." As they prepared for evacuation, the station shuddered violently. Warning lights flashed red. "Pressure spike in adjacent sector." Minsu shouted. "The bulkhead might not." A deafening crack interrupted him as part of the ceiling buckled. Jaiwan looked up to see a section of metal and composite materials breaking free directly above where 3 Vargarian cubs huddled. Without hesitation, she lunged forward, throwing herself over the cubs. There was a moment of searing pain as the debris crashed down on her back and legs, pinning her to the floor. "Ambassador!" Minsu shouted, rushing to her side. Jaiwan could barely speak through the pain. "The cubs, are they hurt?" The 3 young Vargarians were shaken but unharmed, protected by Jaiwan's body. They whimpered and pressed close to her, instinctively seeking warmth and safety. Dr. Sumi quickly examined Jaiwan. "Multiple contusions, possible spinal injury. We need to get this debris off her." "No time," Jaiwan gasped. "Station's failing. Get the children out first." "We can't just leave you," Yunji protested. "Not leaving, just evacuating in proper order," Jaiwan managed a weak smile. "Children first. That's the human way." Minsu checked his scanner again and shook his head. "She's right. We have maybe 20 minutes before this whole section could decompress." "Get the cubs and hatchlings out now," Jaiwan ordered. "Send back another team for the rest once they're safe." Reluctantly, the team began organizing the evacuation. They loaded the most vulnerable children into carrier packs they could wear on their backs through the maintenance shafts. The 3 cubs that Jaiwan had protected refused to leave her side until one of the caregivers gently picked them up. One cub reached back toward Jaiwan, making a sound none of the humans had heard before. "She's calling for you," the caregiver explained. In their language, it's a call cubs use for their protectors. "Tell her I'll be right behind," Jaiwan said, though she wasn't sure if that was true. The pain was becoming unbearable, and she could no longer feel her legs. As the first group prepared to enter the shaft, a communication came through on the emergency channel. "Human rescue team," came Taehyun's voice, surprisingly close. "We have tracked your position. A Vargarian rescue team is approaching from the opposite corridor with cutting equipment." "The Vargarians came back?" Yunji asked in surprise. "We monitored your communication," Taehyun explained. "When we understood humans were risking themselves for the cubs, we reconsidered our approach." Jaiwan felt a surge of hope as she heard the sound of cutting tools on the sealed emergency door. The children would be saved, and maybe she would too. "Get the first group moving through the shaft," she ordered. "The rest can go with the Vargarian team when they break through." As Yunji led the first children into the maintenance shaft, the 3 cubs Jaiwan had protected chittered anxiously from their carriers, still calling back to the human who had shielded them with her own body. The medical bay of the Vargarian flagship gleamed with advanced technology. Jaiwan Park lay on a recovery bed, her body still healing 3 days after the space station crisis. The Vargarian doctors had repaired her damaged spine with their superior medical knowledge, but recovery would take time. Jaimun's eyes fluttered open to find herself surrounded by silver-furred faces. Elder Dohayan, Taehyun, and 3 other high-ranking Vargarians stood around her bed, their amber eyes studying her with unusual intensity. "You are awake," Taehyun stated. "Good. We have been waiting." Jaimun tried to sit up, wincing at the pain that shot through her back. A Vargarian doctor gently pressed her back down. "Please remain still," the doctor advised. "Your body is still healing." "The children?" Jaimun asked, her voice hoarse. "Did everyone make it out?" "All young ones are safe," Dohayan confirmed. "Not a single cub, child, or hatchling was lost. Because of you and your team." Jaimun relaxed slightly, closing her eyes briefly in relief. "And my people? Lieutenant Yoonji? Engineer Minsu?" "All safe," Taehyun assured her. "Your Lieutenant Yoonji has been coordinating with us on rescue operations. The station is severely damaged but not destroyed." Jaimun nodded, then noticed the Vargarians were still watching her with that strange, intense gaze. "Is something wrong?" she asked. "Not wrong," Dohayan replied slowly. "We are confused. You have challenged our understanding of how species behave." "How so?" Taehyun stepped closer. "In all our history, we have never encountered a species that would risk adult lives to save young that are not their own. It goes against evolutionary logic." "But that's exactly what you did," Jaimun pointed out. "Your rescue team came back for us." "After we saw humans doing it first," Dohayan admitted. "We have always followed our protocol: adults evacuate to safety, then organize rescue from secure positions. It is logical. It preserves those with skills and knowledge." "But you put yourself in danger," Taehyun continued, "when you could have ordered others to go. You, an ambassador, shielded cubs with your own body when debris fell." Jaimun shrugged slightly, then regretted the movement as pain flared again. They were children in danger. Any human would have done the same. The Vargarians exchanged glances. "That is what we find most remarkable," Dohayan said. "This appears to be a species-wide trait among humans. All human adults present chose to risk themselves for young ones, regardless of species." Before Jaimun could respond, the medical bay door slid open. A small Vargarian cub entered, followed closely by Lieutenant Yoonji. Jaimun recognized the cub as one of the 3 she had protected from the falling debris. "Heejin insisted on seeing you," Yoonji explained. "She's been asking about you constantly." The cub approached Jaimun's bed cautiously. When she reached the side, she stood on her hind legs and placed a small paw on Jaimun's hand. "Hello again," Jaimun said softly. Heejin chirped something in the Vargarian language, then carefully placed a small object next to Jaimun's hand, a polished stone pendant on a leather cord. "It is a guardian stone," Dohayan translated, his voice filled with something like awe. "In our ancient traditions, it marks one who has earned the right to protect a family's cubs. They are rarely given, even among our own kind." Heejin chirped again, more insistently. "She says you saved her life," Taehyun translated. "She has chosen you as her guardian." Jaimun looked at the small pendant, deeply touched. "Tell her I'm honored." The cub didn't wait for translation. She climbed carefully onto the edge of the bed and curled up next to Jaimun's side, purring softly. "We have made a decision," Taehyun announced formally. "The Vargarian High Council has created a new designation for humans, Universal Guardians." "What does that mean?" Jaimun asked. "It means humans will be welcomed in our creches as caregivers and protectors," Dohayan explained. "Never before have we allowed any other species such close contact with our young. But we have seen that humans possess something unique, a protective instinct that extends beyond your own kind. This will be announced to the Galactic Council," Taehyun added. "Other predator species will know that humans can be trusted with what we value most, our children." A week later, Jaimun stood with the help of a walking cane at a formal ceremony on the Vargarian homeworld. Hundreds of Vargarians filled a massive stone amphitheater. At the center stood representatives from both species, human and Vargarian. Elder Dohayan spoke to the assembly in their rumbling language, then switched to English for the human delegation's benefit. Today we recognize a truth we did not expect to find. Among the stars, we have discovered not just allies, but guardians. Humans have proven through action, not words, that they will protect all young ones as their own. He turned to face Jaiwan directly. In the moment of greatest danger, when debris was falling and you could have saved yourself, you called out children first. That's the human way. Now we understand what makes your kind worthy of our trust. He-Jin and the other cubs from the station disaster came forward, each carrying a guardian stone. One by one, they presented them to the human rescuers. As Jaiwan accepted her stone formally this time, she saw something new in the eyes of the barbarians watching, not just respect, but understanding. Two predator species from different worlds had found common ground in the most fundamental instinct of all, the drive to protect the young, regardless of whose they might be.